that will be received by the Department of Defence instead, not a personal gift. So again, there's a twist there that's very interesting. Meanwhile, Ed Martin, who is the Department of Justice's pardon attorney, is launching an investigation into Joe Biden's last-minute auto pen pardons. We've never seen pardons of this scope, and it looks like they could be corrupt. Meanwhile, Trump has also mentioned in relation to peace talks that are scheduled between Putin and Zelensky, he says, tomorrow we're all booked. It doesn't mean I wouldn't do it to save a lot of lives in return from where I'm going in the Middle East. And I don't know that Putin would be there if I'm not there. Meanwhile, he did say that he's sending Marco Rubio in his place at least. A Carolina Custom Leather, that's the name of the company, has said that it's doubled its sales as a result of the Trump tariffs. The owner, Bob Timberlake, says it could not have been better for us. We finally are successful in getting furniture back in North Carolina and America. Meanwhile, the HHS Secretary RFK Jr. has delivered an opening statement on his fiscal year budget by saying, we will shift funding away from bureaucracy towards direct impact. We will preserve legacy programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Head Start as the foundation of the Make America Healthy Again agenda. Meanwhile, Speaker Mike Johnson has announced possible disciplinary measures against House Democrats who assaulted law enforcement at the ICE facility and who trespassed. And he thinks that censure is appropriate. And I think he says it's pretty clear that the law was violated. There are three possible disciplinary actions. You can censure, and that probably does seem appropriate. You can kick them off committees and you can expel some of them. Expulsion, he says, requires a 2/3 vote, so that's unlikely. Meanwhile, New York Governor Kathy Hochul has said that she will send out, wait for this, inflation refund checks of up to $400 to 8.2 million households in her state. She, of course, is the Democrat governor. Meanwhile, Cassie Ventura has said that she has had so much sex that her body broke. She said Sean Diddy Combs' ex-girlfriend has made graphic claims about the physical toll of his freak-off parties. And this is all published in the newspapers. I'm not going to read it out. It's just absolutely vile what she had to suffer through. But we'll try and keep abreast of what's going on there in terms of the developments in that particular case. Nicola, a lot of news from America, as you can see, but there's a real shaking now that Kennedy's making a huge difference within the HHS, and he's got them on the back foot. And as we keep seeing now, it seems to be that the flow of money is so important. And the fact that he's now saying he's shifting it away from the bureaucracy and to direct management, he is taking the money and the power, as is Trump, away from the actual deep state operatives. And my point being, before I cut to the end of the news, I interviewed AJ Rice, as I mentioned earlier in the show, and he explains very specifically in that interview exactly how this particular system works. So fascinating. Again, the narrative weaving here at the Daily Australian. There's no one doing it better than us, without me blowing my trumpet any further. Nicola.
I think as well there is a particular messaging that's going on with Trump getting on so well and having great diplomacy with the King of Saudi Arabia, because other administrations told us that Saudi Arabia and a Saudi family were responsible for 9/11 without going down too many rabbit holes. But I genuinely think if there was, because we never saw a dead body there either, did we? What I'm saying about Osama bin Laden, right? We didn't see that. That was apparently some burial at sea. Yeah, all right, pull the other one. It's got bells on. So he would not, right? Trump is a patriot. He would not have friendly relationships with a family who were part of and responsible for that. That is likely why that family was flown out of New York, 24 of them, on the 13th of September 2001. Because they weren't involved, but it was about to be announced that they were, or the family name was. So again, this leads to many conclusions for me, that Trump is A, a patriot, B, he knows the truth, and C, they weren't responsible for 9/11, and neither was that person that we were told was buried at sea. And this created this whole thing where there was, including myself, ill will towards a community or a particular religion that we were told were extremists and that they were coming to attack us. And it was nothing to do with that. Everything we're living through is nothing to do with that. What it's to do with, including these genetically modified ticks, including the fake COVID-19 imagined pandemic, and now all the boys have bad hearts. what this is to do with is that somehow, somewhere, somebody, the somebodies we suspect, our pensions aren't there. That's why BlackRock, the hedge fund, is involved, and Vanguard, the hedge fund. Our pensions aren't there, so it would be expedient for them for less people to get to that particular need in their lives. It's all related. It started at 9/11, the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic started at 9/11. You could go back further and say it started with the assassination of JFK, but really I think the deployment, the operational side of what we're living through started on September 11th, 2001. I remember where I was and what it felt like, and that I did buy into that propaganda, but they've tripped over themselves. They've gone too far. They've done too much, and now the world is awake. I don't think when you've got Jimmy Dore and Sky News and Channel 9 talking about the kinds of things that we've been talking about for years, Jason, I think it's pretty obvious that something shonky has gone on. And you talk about those people getting massive checks, 8 or 9 grand, because of inflation. What kind of checks are Australians due for the sale of their coal to China, to sale of their natural gas to Japan? They sell it so cheaply to Japan that Japan on sells it for more money as if it's Japanese natural gas. What kind of checks are Australians due, Jason? I reckon they're massive.
Well, the Hammersley mine that was just discovered had 5.7 trillion US dollars worth of material within. That calculates to $330,000 for each Australian.
Right, so there's
$330,000 for
plenty of
each Australian.
profit. So give every Australian, real Australian, who was here at the time it was pulled out of the earth, 100 grand each right now.
Well, yeah, well,
By the
I would go.
way, something really important has happened, Jason. I watched the oath taking of Anthony Albanese, and he took a different oath than he took last time. Last time he swore his oath to this corporation, the Queen of Australia Corporation, and this time he took it to the Commonwealth, the people in the Commonwealth. I watched him say it. So unless they've done some legal jargon shenanigan with the language, that means that if he does any of the crap he was doing in his last administration, he can be held up for treason.
Interesting. We'll watch with
It
bated
is.
breath. It's extraordinary, isn't it? So these developments, isn't it interesting that those people that were saying conspiracy theory, well, that term needs to be revised to spoiler alert.
Yeah, they've
There,
been saying that
there
for
you go.
years.
Now,
Yeah.
a
What
couple
it
of couple
is,
of
what it is, when they call you a conspiracy theorist, they would rather you don't theorize on their giant conspiracy. That's what it
correct.
is. This is a giant conspiracy, by the way, is one of the top five major crimes on earth, right? So they're all guilty of this. Unfortunately, they're all old or dead. Kissinger, George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr., Biden, Soros, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. I knew this couple were bad. They're my least favorite couple on earth. In 1998, he passed that Telecommunications Act to do with the 5G towers, but we didn't know it yet. And he said in his act, no health or human concern can now prevent the installation of telecommunications towers. What do you mean, no health or human concern? You just locked down the world and made everyone wear masks and get injected with something that's fucked their hearts
Mm.
because we're all going to catch a flu. What do you mean, no health and human concern? This was a big plan. This was a big. So I'm wrong. It didn't start in 2001 on 9/11. It started in 1998 with the presidency of Bill Clinton.
Yeah, but you can argue, as you said, go back to JFK, but it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the same trajectory. There's another shocking story that started with the Unreliable People's Voice news, but they were the first to sort of get it out there, but it came from elsewhere, LifeSite News, etc. And this was to do with Singapore um, introducing or at least confirming in their legislation that if you don't take a vaccine when the health minister says that you need to take one, that you can be fined and imprisoned.
Is that
That's an
real?
interest. That's an interesting story. I've been looking into that and found the legislation that actually shows it because People's Voice had part of the legislation there, but not the part that was missing that said the fine and the
Mm.
prison. But I was able to find it somewhere else to verify. So it's quite concerning, and we'll sort of do a bit more digging into that to find out what's really going on there
Yes,
because
please. Where's the
again
UN?
Yeah, exactly. And the problem again is trying to get to the bottom of it and getting better at sourcing this news so that we can know that something is verified. So we know that the work we've done in COVID has now resulted in Nick Coatsworth coming out, as you just saw, saying that the jabs were for the wrong reasons, etc. So that's a big deal. A couple of things I just want to bring up on the Saudi Arabia and the Middle East story and what you said about Trump. The other interesting development today was that Trump has urged the Syrian president, who he has removed sanctions from, to sign the Abraham Accords. So what that would mean is that this is to acknowledge that Israel has a right to exist, but at the same time, what he has done is that he's provided comfort and relief to the Syrian people by removing said sanctions. So this is it can only be considered as a peacemaker. You can't say that this is pro-Israel if you're going to Israel's sworn enemy Syria and removing their sanctions. This is beyond war, and Trump has specifically said on this tour of the Middle East that it is about peace through strength, preferred over anything else. We don't want violence, we want diplomacy. So this is the real peacemaker in action here.
Major and we've strategist. Seen that we're in a war. This is a wartime strategist.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Now, the other big story, which no one's seen yet, is that the Democrats are looking to annul DNC Vice Chair David Hogg, his election. David Hogg was the kid that was was involved in a school shooting or something, and it stopped. And his father was an ex-FBI who had passed away earlier. Now, that always raises suspicions about what's going on here. But David Hogg looks identical to someone involved in the Sandy Hook story. I'll just leave it there if you want to check out David Hogg and Adam Lanza.
An asset. I've seen that. He looks like an asset, yeah.
So interestingly, now that they're walking that back in the DNC, so we'll watch that story as well. Look, it's absolutely fascinating. If you are watching mainstream news and not watching the Daily Australian, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're not going to get the stories over there that you get on this show. So we have brought up a lot of information today, a lot of verified information, and we're pointing to what will be the next spoiler alerts. I think we've had about 5 spoiler alerts in today's show, Nicola. It's been a monster.
Yeah, I think we're like chili hot and they're like vanilla.
Yes,
they're just vanilla. I'm sorry, they are.
Exactly. Maybe that's what we do on independent news now. We rate ourselves in terms of how hot the chili goes. You know how they have those chili charts?
5 chilies today, I reckon, Jason.
It's a 5 chili hot. Well, it's been a terrific show, and I hope you're enjoying the revised format, if you will, and the extra clips that we're bringing in. It all comes down to the news of the day, obviously, but time taken to put this show together. We really appreciate those of you that are looking at our sponsorship and working out how clean water can work for you, and at the same time, those that are sort of making donations, etc., or subscribing, if you will, to our Substack at the Daily Australian is also very greatly appreciated. And those funds that come through do help us to improve, put the time in, build the website, all of the things that we're trying to do. So thanks again for doing that.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We will reach a point, as we're not on a television network yet, where our laptops will explode. And unless we replace those, we're not going to be able to do anything. Because I can tell you now, the brains have been blown out of my little Dell laptop. So thank you so much for watching and supporting. We really appreciate it. Jason does research everything. I also research the clips that I send to Jason, and we try and bring you as much fact along with our opinion as possible, because we think it's really important, because what we are seeing is an awful lot of propaganda. So it's okay, saying, oh, this was ripped from the headlines and this is mainstream media. But the question you have to ask is, yes, but is it true? And so we break it down for you. Thanks so much for watching the Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Jason Olborn. We will see you all over again tomorrow. My name is Nicola Charles, and I'm a proud anti-vaxxer from Victoria, Australia. Now, I've been worried about vaccines for a long time, but it's not just those clear substances in vials that get injected into people's arms that I'm concerned about. It's vaccines being dropped from the sky as aerosols, and vaccines that are added to liquids that we can drink. In 2013, the Australian government administered 1,000 cholera vaccines to recipients in a drink. Who is delivering your water every day, and what is the quality of that water? They've already told us that it contains fluoride, a neurotoxin.
3 years ago, I stopped drinking tap water and recently went onto the Zeta Potential program. This adds alkalinity to the blood and also increases your electrolytes. Something is giving people mass cancers around the world, and jumping onto Zeta Potential for me has been one way for me to alleviate my fears. If you want to jump on the knowledge train with regard to water, click on the link below this show.